Tonight, all eyes are on the economy, but there seems little good news in sight. Are the current economic woes just a bump in the road, or will they derail the Bush agenda?
Live from Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Bill Press. On the right, Tucker Carlson. In the Crossfire, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, ranking member on the Finance Committee, and Democratic Congressman John Spratt from South Carolina, ranking member on the Budget Committee.
Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. Who's to blame for the ailing economy? That's the question gripping Washington this week. The answer may determine who controls the government next year. Each side has a ready answer. President Bush is the obvious culprit, say Democrats. His gigantic tax cut killed the economic expansion of the Clinton years. It's his fault. Not so, say Republicans. Bush inherited the downturn. The tax cut is part of the remedy. By next year, signs of recovery will be obvious. Perhaps so, but at the moment, nothing about the economy looks certain or particularly positive. Unemployment is up, the stock market is down, and pressure mounts for solutions from both Congress and from the president. What will they come up with? More tax cuts? Reduced spending? We'll hear soon, and we'll likely hear again when they reappear as campaign slogans in 2002. Bill Press.
Senator Grassley, I think all of us agree there's a problem with the economy and the budget. The debate is over how to fix it, and as Tucker said, who's to blame. And I think on who's to blame, there's absolutely no question. And yesterday, the other day, Senator Daschle put his finger right on the man responsible. Please listen to your leader.
It's his budget, it's his economy, it's his tax cut, it's his solution.
It's George Bush's problem. He made the problem. He's got to fix it, doesn't he, Senator?
In budget land, everybody lives in glass houses. So I think you ought to be pretty careful about throwing stones because your house might be hit as well. I think that, you can go back and say that this started at the middle of last year, or the NASDAQ went down more than 50% during the last year of Clinton's years. But where does that get us? We're looking now to the future. In fact, America is about the future, and every budget we have is about the future, and I think we ought to be concentrating on the future.
Well, I agree with you that the economy certainly started to slump before George Bush took office. But in the middle of that slump, he pushes through in June 2001, this year, this $1.3 trillion tax cut. And now the White House is even admitting, Senator, you were probably at the meeting the other day when Mitch Daniels said that's going to require cutting into the Social Security surplus from $9 billion to $15 billion this year. So his budget's out of whack. Don't you think the president has a responsibility to submit a reasonable budget, a new budget, a balanced budget?
If you look at the fact that 48 out of the 49 Democrats in the Senate voted for a tax cut that was only $100 billion less than what we finally passed at $1.2 trillion. Look at the fact that if we had adopted the Democrat budget, the Democrat alternative in the Senate, we would be into Social Security under that budget. But what good does it do to talk about that? We've got to talk about the future. We have to plan for the future, and I think we can overcome this. If you stop to think of the fact that we are now in the 4th year of paying down on the national debt, that's quite an accomplishment compared to the 28 years before that we didn't pay down anything.
Congressman Spratt, if you read the New York Times editorial page yesterday, and I'm sure you did because I think Democrats are required to do that, you must have read this line. This is about the budget.
Paul Krugman.
Well, the New York Times editorialist writes, the Democrats feel passivity is their best strategy in dealing with the economy. It's obvious that's true. You saw Tom Daschle basically said it's not our problem. The strategy here clearly is to hope the economy continues to tank because it makes a great platform to run on in the midterms. True, isn't it?
Basically what we're saying to the president is we passed your budget. It has led us to this present situation. Now, you've got the first move. The burden is upon you to produce a new budget to get us out of this ditch. We're not saying we won't engage. We don't have a responsibility to make recommendations ourselves, but we do think the ball lies in his court. I'm not blaming the recession on the president. The seeds were sown a long time ago outside the government. Bubble burst in the high-tech industry, and we're suffering the consequences of it. What I do blame him for is he bet the budget on a blue sky forecast and should have seen in January or subsequent months that the underlying conditions of this forecast weren't going to obtain and we were going too far. And he told us we could have it all. We could have a big tax cut. We could have an increase in defense. We could have more for education. We could double NIH. Well, we can't do that now.
Well, but wait a second. I mean, you're an elected member of Congress, and so are your Democratic colleagues. That's the best you can do, is say the president blew the forecast, the tax cut was too big, but offer no strategy, no recommendations, no suggestions even for how to bring us out of the slump?
I'm simply saying, Mr. President, you've got the first move. This is your budget. Tell us how you would rectify this budget in light of the present circumstances. It's in deficit. It's in the Social Security Trust Fund.
Senator, you wanted to say something?
Well, looking ahead 10 years, we always look ahead 10 years. The law requires us to look ahead 10 years. The Democrats, when they offered their alternative budget, looked ahead 10 years with the $1.250 trillion tax cut, with all the expenditures they wanted to do, et cetera, et cetera. They would be into the trust funds today if their budget had been adopted. There's only that much difference between their tax cut that 48 out of the 49 Democrats voted for and we voted for. So I think here we are. We've got to look at what we're going to do. And I think that we can work our way out of it through a combination of reductions in expenditures. We've got to keep the tax cut. If we didn't keep the tax cut we have now, and if we hadn't already passed it, we would be fluttering around seeing what we could do to stimulate the economy.
Well, let me ask you about that, because, you know, the president he's sort of Johnny One Note. I mean, you know, whatever the problem is, he's got the solution to it, and he's fixated on one solution. He has been for the last year and a half, if not 2 years. Here's the president just maybe repeating himself.
This is a refund of your own money. You don't need to thank me. It's your money to begin with. The rebate checks are now hitting. We sent money back to the people who pay the bills in America. One half of the checks have gone out.
Now, Senator, that's all he keeps talking about is this tax cut, and now the economy's tanking. Isn't it pretty clear that you've got to admit this tax cut as a stimulus ain't working?
How do you know? It's only half the checks are out there. They aren't spent yet. And also, don't forget that tax cuts are only part of it. The spending policy of the Congress and the Federal Reserve rate cuts are another part of the policy.
Well, the signs are certainly not very good so far, Senator. So you talk about looking ahead and looking over the next 2 years. Don't you think the president ought to take a look at this tax cut and say, look at, maybe we ought to either put a trigger in, Senator, if I may, put a trigger in, okay, so that if there's no surplus, we don't have the tax cut, or modify the tax cut in those outgoing years so everybody knows that Washington is going to continue some fiscal discipline.
Okay, modify the tax cuts in the out years. Even if we had adopted the Democrat tax policy, they would have the same problems that were adopted with the ones we have now.
Well, then fine, but how are we going to fix it today? Isn't that a solution?
Well, here, you're talking about, don't forget, 29 years, 28 years of deficits. Here we got 4 years of paying down on the national debt. We're going to pay down the second largest amount in the national debt we've ever paid down. Now, you're saying that we're in a bad situation?
I am saying we're in a bad situation.
You're wrong.
Well, if you think dipping into the what's good about dipping into the Social Security surplus when George Bush promised not to?
Okay, let me suggest to you that there's not one thing changing as far as the Social Security Trust Fund is concerned. Since 1936, every year but 82 and 83, there's always been a positive cash flow in the Social Security Trust Fund. That positive cash flow has always been invested in Treasury bonds. They're still going to be invested in Treasury bonds. There's not one single a Social Security check in jeopardy now or into the future between now and the year 2037.
Didn't George Bush promise not to touch it? Didn't George Bush promise not to touch it?
Let me stop the propaganda here for just 1 second, Ted.
Propaganda? The facts? You don't want to hear the facts.
I'm trying to get Mr. Spratt to answer a question. Now, I asked you earlier, Congressman, what the president ought to do, and you said, essentially what Daschle said, I'm not sure, but he ought to do something. Let me just throw one idea up that he hasn't signed off on yet, but Republicans may endorse the idea of at least a temporary capital gains tax cut that is projected to throw almost $10 billion into revenues, but by 2004, if they did this. Why is this a bad idea, cutting capital gains taxes?
Well, first of all, the $10 billion gain from a tax cut is purely speculative. We don't know that it will happen. It could exacerbate the revenue shortfall. Secondly, what does the capital gains cut do? I think it would probably, particularly if it were time limited, just a 2-year capital gains tax cut, everybody would rush out and what? Sell their stock. You'd see a massive sell-off in the stock market. Think that would help the situation? I don't.
I must say, I haven't seen a single projection that indicates it would do anything but throw a ton of money into the toward the federal government. I mean, people would sell stock they wanted to sell but couldn't because they didn't want to be dinged for it with, you know, these enormous 20%.
Then it drives the market down, and how does that?
Well, how
does
about
that
this
help
then?
the
Why don't you try?
situation?
How about a payroll tax cut? Democrats have
Well,
complained
look,
that
now you're getting into something that might have some efficacy in this situation, because if you put the money, the tax cut, in the hands of working people who are likely to spend it, then you might give that push to aggregate demand that'll get this
Well,
economy.
there you go. Well,
up and
why are
going
Democrats coming out, rather than just sitting and sniping at the president, why aren't they coming out and pushing for a big payroll tax
Well, this
cut?
debate's just begun. If you have to choose between the two, a payroll tax cut or a payroll tax relief. Now, the problem with a payroll tax cut is such is the Social Security Trust Fund is not adequately funded to last past 2038. So I don't want to see something that takes money out of the Social Security Trust Fund and makes it insolvent sooner. That's counterproductive.
Senator Grassley, just a quick another question about the tax cut before we take a break. I haven't gotten my check yet, okay? And that burns me, but that's all right. But I do have, this is the first copy of the check that I've seen. I've suspected all along that this tax rebate is just political, you know, gimmick for the White House. And if I'm not true, will you tell me why is it that these rebate checks are sent from Austin, U.S. Treasury sent from Austin, Texas, Senator?
There are
not Washington, D.C., Austin, Texas.
There are 4 places in the United States that they're printing those checks, and obviously Austin's one of them.
You don't think that's a little message there?
Not at all.
All right. Okay, we're going to take a break. You know, there's another side of this budget, which is spending. Is there going to be any new spending, or is spending going to be cut? And if so, what programs are going to be cut? We'll get the answers when we come back. More Crossfire.
Crossfire is brought to you by Pennsylvania. Come invent the future.
Among the highest number of graduates in computer science and engineering in the country. Over 4,700 graduates in computer and information sciences. Over 5,000 graduates in engineering, including chemical and bioengineering. And they all graduated from the same place. Just who produces this kind of talent for the workforce each and every year?
Pennsylvania.
Enter a new era of discovery at Bristol-Myers Squibb, where groundbreaking genetic research is underway.
Winning the Tour de France was a victory for cancer medicines. But Luke, it's just the start of incredible things to come.
At the Bristol-Myers Squibb Center for Applied Genomics, researchers strive to unlock the secrets of breast cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes to lead the way in new frontiers against disease.
Hope, triumph, and the miracle of medicine. Bristol-Myers Squibb Company.
It's easy to take electricity for granted. A lot of us aren't even sure where it comes from. So we're sometimes surprised to learn that over half of the electricity we use comes from coal.
Mrs. Windler!
And thanks to a $50 billion investment in clean coal technologies by America's electric utilities that use coal, it's getting cleaner every day, helping us protect something we can't take for granted. Our environment.
Driving is a big responsibility, one that deserves your full attention. But a distracted driver is a factor in 1 out of every 4 automobile collisions. Don't let food, friends, or a phone call endanger your life. Stay focused and stay alive. Learn to avoid driving's most dangerous distractions from this book. It's free from Shell. Count on Shell.
Her kids were brutally killed. As Andrea Yates stands accused of the murders, why is now standing strong in her defense? Their president, Kim Gandy, faces off with fierce conservative Babe Buchanan on Wolf Blitzer Reports. Coming up next on CNN.
Fred, can you get the new software that IT didn't approve?
I opened that virus just like IT told us not to.
At CDW, we understand what it can be like in IT. That's why we have top-name brands in stock, so you get the solutions you need when you need them. Like these memory upgrades from Kingston Technology, with guaranteed compatibility and a lifetime warranty.
Hey, Fred, you remember those upgrades I forgot to tell you about, right? Good.
Kingston Technology and CDW, computing solutions built for business.
Welcome back to Crossfire. The market's now officially a bear. The economy's in the tank. The surplus is gone. The budget's out of balance. The nation needs a fix. But what's the answer, and whose job is it? That's tonight's debate. Republican Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa says it's partly Bill Clinton's fault and Democrats must help come up with a plan. But Democratic Congressman John Spratt of South Carolina believes Bush caused the problem, and it's up to him to come up with a solution. Tucker.
Now, Congressman, I'm still trying to get to this question of what should be done. Still trying to wrench a suggestion out of you as a representative of your party. What about rescinding the tax cut? Why aren't Democrats pushing that? I think I know the answer. They're afraid to, but sure. I want to hear from you.
We're not going to rescind a tax cut in the middle of what could be a recession. The economy's at the tipping point. The tax cut was already implemented on July the 1st. It won't be, the rate cuts won't come again until 2004. So that issue is still hanging out there, but we're not pushing that in the middle of a recession.
Well, of course, I guess more to the point, a year before an election, you're not pushing it. But if the tax cut is in fact responsible, as Democrats, perhaps not you, but others imply for the downturn, then why not? It's in your power to do something about it. Why not?
We think the tax cut is responsible for the deterioration in the budget, partly the economy, partly the tax cut. That's why the bottom line has shrunk and the surplus has disappeared. The tax cut has had a lot to do with that. Now, we supported the idea. In fact, I was the first to bring to the floor the idea of this tax rebate. It was smaller than the Senate had, so we didn't have the same problem with invading the trust funds, but we asked for about a $60 billion rebate, hoping that it would be a boost to the economy. We could get this economy up and chugging again. And so we initiated that idea. We're not against all tax cuts. We had a $800 billion tax cut in our budget resolution.
Senator, I'd like to suggest why they won't cut or change the tax bill, because this bipartisan tax bill has $29 billion for education, $50 billion for retirement security, $63 to eliminate death tax, $172 billion for poor families for refundable tax credits, and $421 billion for a tax break.
One problem with it is it sunsets of its own accord. In 2010, it becomes a pumpkin. It repeals of its own accord by its own language.
Well, Senator, believe it or not, a liberal that I am, I'm not against all tax cuts either. But let me suggest one thing wrong with the Bush tax cut is there are 29 million Americans who didn't get a dime. They didn't get a dime because they don't make enough money to pay income taxes. So if you're thinking about new taxes, new tax cuts, wouldn't you have to agree that the only fair way to go is to cut the payroll tax, maybe even temporarily? Cut the Social Security payroll tax so that everybody gets a break.
Yeah, you can't cut the Social Security payroll tax because we're studying right now what we need to do to improve and modernize Social Security. So 30-year-olds today, when they retire, will have as good of a system as people who are 55 years or older when they're retiring. And we ought to wait until this study gets done and make determinations then on what the level of taxation ought to be. We've got to keep our commitments to people who are dependent upon Social Security.
But I don't get it. I mean, you just gave a tax cut that benefits mainly the wealthiest people in this country, and now you Republicans are talking about a capital gains cut which benefits the wealthiest people in this country, and all these guys who are working men and women who don't make enough to pay income taxes, you're just going to leave them high and dry, Senator.
Now here, we got $172 billion for a child tax credit, for the earned income tax credit. Those are low-income people that benefited from this tax bill.
Why not cut the payroll tax?
That phases in over a period of, what, 4 or 5 years?
Well,
next year you get $100 additional child tax credit. So this bill could have been weighted more towards people likely to spend the money so that it would have prodded the economy along. You got an excellent idea. We put it in our rebate. We said the 26 million who don't actually pay taxes but pay lots of payroll taxes should get some of this rebate. If they'd gotten it, they'd be spending it right now.
Now, Congressman, you said something right at the beginning of the show, and I'm not sure all of our viewers heard it, and I just hope you can amplify it. You said, or at least implied, that President Bush is not responsible for the downturn in the economy.
I'm not blaming him on the recession.
So that's right. He's not responsible for the impending recession.
I do think he made a mistake in taking blue sky estimates in January when there already were storm clouds gathering over this economy and betting the budget on a $5.6 trillion surplus, which has simply disappeared.
That's interesting, because back then in January...
He didn't use any different blue sky estimates than every member of Congress uses, including the Democrats, when they propose their budget.
But we all,
blue sky
we all agree that we'll use the same forecast. The Clinton OMB at the end of December projected that the surplus over this period of time would be $4.9 billion. 25 days later, OMB, under the Bush administration, CBO comes up with $5.6 trillion.
Wait a second. I mean, the forecast...
$800 billion increase since last July.
Right. So everyone was working with numbers that turned out not to be entirely accurate. But it was President Bush, if you'll remember back, who began, right when he was elected, began talking about the worsening state of the economy. And when he did, he was accused by Democrats of talking down the economy, I think was the ludicrous phrase used at the time. Doesn't he look prescient now? Don't you take back those words on behalf of your party?
No, I think they probably did talk down the economy in order to talk up the tax cut. But I think the economy...
Well, that's pretty diabolical,
I don't think that was a causal event that put this economy into a downturn by any means. I think they're much... The market was already in a downslide at that point in time.
Senator, I do want to ask you a question about spending, because I've heard the President say Congress has got to cut spending. Congress has got to cut spending. And at the same time today, I hear the White House is saying today they want $8 billion this year for missile defense. Now, they can't have it both ways, can they, Senator?
8.3.
$8.3 billion. I mean, how are they talking about more wild spending and at the same time telling Congress to cut spending?
This budget situation isn't bad because a little bit of belt tightening by any department of government is a good thing. Now, whether everybody will get what they want, I don't know. But let me just...
how about that one, please? You're ducking the question. Are you saying you cut spending for everything but George Bush's pet projects?
Absolutely not. Let's look at the history, though. 1966 is a year that's used by a lot of Democrats. Defense was 7.8% of GDP. Today it's 3.1%. Non-defense at that time was 10%. 15% today. So we have the same level of expenditures, but defense has gone way down and domestic has gone way up. So there can be a lot of savings there as well.
What the President's seeking is $32 billion next year over and above what we're spending this year. The Clinton-Cohen administration had recommended an increase of $14 billion. The Bush administration is seeking 18.4 on top of that. Now, all of these numbers you've seen from the Congressional Budget Office about what happens next year and the year after, invasion of Social Security, don't include the defense increase. When you factor that in, you've got a much tougher problem.
Congressman Spratt, Senator Grassley, thank you both very much for joining us. Bill Press believes my mental budget is out of whack. I believe the same of his. We'll have the reconciliation process when we return in our closing comments in just a moment. Join us.
AOL is very easy to use.
I was real scared to use any computer at all, but it really was easy.
If I could do it, how hard could it be? You've got mail.
My mother uses email to keep in touch with the grandkids.
Instant messages are great.
It's one big community.
I can get information instantaneously.
I like to see what the news is.
I do check the weather a lot.
I manage my portfolio on AOL.
I plan my summer vacation on AOL.
I get 24-hour customer service, and it's free.
America Online. It's easy and it's fast. So easy to use, no wonder it's #1. Call 1-800-4ONLINE.
I remember 20 years ago how it turned the racing world upside down. First by introducing a race car with quattro all-wheel drive, and second by having a woman driving.
Most acclaimed series on TV, Law & Order, is now on TNT 4 nights a week at 8.
You have to talk to me.
The girl is just violent, Jack.
Get caught up all over again with Law & Order 4 nights a week on TNT.
Closed captioning for this program has been provided by Verizon Communications.
Newsmakers want to talk to one man. Wolf Blitzer reports next. Then cut through the headlines and get to the point. Followed by Larry King Live on CNN.
I'm Lori Farkas for Dish Network FYI. Do you have a certain group of regular television channels that you always watch? Then you should set up a favorites list. To begin, press your menu button and select Favorites option. You can create and change the list yourself, adding and removing channels as you wish. When you make your list active, your program guide displays only the channels in that list. There are many ways to customize favorites to suit your needs.
Sunny today, sunny tomorrow.
You know what they say, nothing in life is guaranteed.
So true.
But there's always the exception.
So true.
Showtime Unlimited gives you 200 exclusive movies every month, guaranteed. 50 very original shows, guaranteed. 10 channels, just $10.99.
So great. Is that true?
So true. Call now for the best value on Dish Network. Guaranteed.
So generous.
Now you can improve your sexual performance free. That's right, to introduce you to VitaFree.com, we're giving away a 120-day supply of Passion ZX, the incredible new all-natural herbal supplement that's proven effective to increase your sexual performance, increase sensitivity, and stamina. Enerex and Viromax sell for up to $200 for a 120-day supply, but VitaFree.com gives you a 120-day supply of Passion ZX for free. Get back the energy and vigor you always had. Now anyone can increase performance, increase pleasure, and make that special relationship the most satisfying it can be. Enerex and Viromax sell for up to $200 for a 120-day supply. Passion ZX is all natural, improves blood flow, and will increase your sexual energy without side effects and without a prescription. To get your free 120-day supply of Passion ZX, all you have to do is call the 800 number on your screen right now or log on to VitaFree.com. But don't delay. This is a special limited time offer. Call right now and get your free 120-day supply of Passion ZX shipped confidentially to your home.
This is CNN.
I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. Coming up at the top of the hour, we'll focus on Andrea Yates, who goes on trial tomorrow, accused of killing her 5 children. The National Organization for Women has caused a commotion by expressing support for her. Now, as President Kim Gandy will explain why and face off against conservative activist Bae Buchanan. Wolf Blitzer reports follows Crossfire's closing comments.
Carolyn Condit is publicly standing by her man, but how does she really feel? The trials and tribulations of political wives. What's it like being attached to a politician in the midst of scandal? Greta Van Susteren gets to the point. Tonight, 8:30 Eastern on CNN.
Driving is a big responsibility, one that deserves your full attention. But a distracted driver is a factor in 1 out of every 4 automobile collisions. Don't let food, friends, or a phone call endanger your life. Stay focused and stay alive. Learn to avoid driving's most dangerous distractions from this book. It's free from Shell. Count on Shell.
What if every market operated like the stock market? Would price swings leave you paralyzed with indecision? Or would you chase whatever's hot at the moment? A Merrill Lynch financial advisor will help you develop a disciplined plan based on your risk tolerance and investment goals, so you can become a smarter investor, not an impulsive one.
Crossfire is hitting the road. Beginning next Monday, we'll bring you a full week of shows live from the George Washington University. You won't want to miss it.
Road again?
On the road again. We won't miss it. We'll be there. You know, it's interesting. I like John Spratt, and he's a relatively honest guy for a Democrat, and I expected him to come out and say, here are the things we hope the president will get behind. He didn't. Even he was content to sit back and just complain and whine and moan about the president not doing what he's supposed to do, offering no alternatives.
Hey, the president ran for the job. It's his job to do it. You know, Tucker,
Bill,
you know,
come on.
George Bush is reminding me more and more of Gary Condit. You know what I mean? He says, I'm not responsible for the disappearance of the surplus, but he was the last person to see it alive.
That is so
I think he should.
Over.
No, so I think he should give an interview to Connie Chung and say, I screwed up, I messed up, I apologize, and now here's my solution.
I did not have budget with that
Exactly.
That is just...
From the left, I'm Bill Press. Good night for Crossfire.
And from the right, I'm Tucker Carlson. Join us again tomorrow night for another edition of Crossfire.
This is CNN.